The wagon rumbled and groaned, kicking up clouds of red dust that clung to everything. Lily Harper held her worn carpetbag tight, her knuckles white. Dakota Territory, 1883, a new start. That's what she told herself, a prayer whispered more often than she cared to admit. The small town of Harmony Creek slowly came into view, a cluster of wooden buildings huddled against the vast, empty prairie. It wasn't much, just a general store, a saloon, a place she hoped to avoid, a church, and a few scattered homes. But to Lily it was everything. It was a chance to be someone else, someone better. She stepped down from the wagon, her calico dress swishing around her ankles. The dust settled around her scuffed boots. Her heart beat a nervous drum against her ribs. She carried a small sewing machine, carefully wrapped in blankets, a symbol of her new life. No more late nights, no more painted smiles for lonely cowboys. She would sew dresses, mend shirts, and make an honest living. Her new place was a tiny room above the general store, with a window that looked out onto the single dirt road. It smelled of old wood and sun-baked earth. Lily unpacked her few belongings, a thimble, a needle case, some spools of thread. Each item felt like a tiny piece of hope. She hung a sign outside her door, painted neatly by her own hand, Lily Harper, seamstress. The first few days were quiet. A few women peered at her sign, their eyes lingering a little too long, a little too knowing. Lily felt their unspoken questions, the way they seemed to size her up. She knew her past was not something easily shed, like an old coat. Whispers followed her like shadows, even when she walked with her head held high. When she went to the general store for supplies, mothers would subtly pull their children closer, their gazes cool and unwelcoming. It was a constant prickle, a reminder that Harmony Creek might be a new place, but old judgments traveled fast, even across the wide-open plains. Still, Lily kept her chin up, determined to prove them wrong. Lily's days quickly settled into a quiet rhythm of cutting fabric, stitching seams, and mending tears. Yet, the silence in her small shop was often broken by the whispers that drifted up from the street, or the sudden hush that fell over conversations when she entered the general store. It was like a chill wind, always present even on the warmest days. She tried to ignore it, focusing on her work, making sure every stitch was perfect, every button sewn on tight. She wanted to show them with every neat hem and sturdy repair that she was a respectable woman now. But the town's coldness was hard to shake. When Mrs. Henderson, a stern-faced woman with a tight bun, finally brought in a dress for mending, she laid it on the counter as if it might catch something. Her eyes, sharp and critical, swept over Lily before she spoke. "Just the hem," she said, her voice clipped. "And make sure it's done right." There was no warmth, no friendly chat, just a thinly veiled suspicion. Lily nodded, her throat tight, and promised to have it ready by Tuesday. Later that week, Lily decided to attend Sunday service at the small wooden church. She longed for a sense of belonging, a place where she might finally feel accepted. She wore her best, simple blue dress, her hair neatly pinned. As she walked down the aisle, every head turned. The whispers started again, louder this time, like dry leaves rustling. A woman in the front pew pulled her young daughter onto her lap, turning the child's face away from Lily. The little girl, curious, tried to peek, but her mother held her firmly. Lily felt a hot blush creep up her neck. She found an empty spot at the very back, trying to shrink into the wooden pew, wishing she could disappear. The preacher's words about forgiveness and new beginnings seemed to echo hollowly, not reaching the hearts of those around her. It was clear her past was a shadow that refused to fade, clinging to her like the prairie dust. The sting of Sunday's rejection stayed with Lily. She felt more alone than ever, a stranger in a town that refused to open its doors to her. Yet amidst the cold stares and hushed tones, there was one person who offered a different kind of silence. Samuel Pike, the blacksmith. His shop was at the edge of town, filled with the clang of hammer on iron and the smell of smoke. He was a quiet man, broad-shouldered and strong, with eyes that seemed to see more than they let on. Lily had passed his shop many times, hearing the rhythmic ring of his work, but they had never spoken. Then one morning she found her old wooden chair, the one she used for sewing, sitting outside her door. Its wobbly leg, which she had tried to fix with string, was now firmly mended with a small, expertly crafted iron brace. There was no note, no explanation, just the perfect repair. Lily looked towards the blacksmith's shop, but Samuel was already bent over his anvil, his back to her. A small, unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest. A few days later, a fresh horseshoe appeared, nailed above her shop door. It was heavy and new, a clear sign of good luck. Again, no words, no fanfare, just the silent gesture. Lily touched the rough iron, a small smile playing on her lips. It was a secret kindness, a quiet defiance against the town's judgment. She started noticing Samuel more. He would nod curtly when she passed, a simple, respectful greeting that felt like a lifeline in a sea of cold shoulders. His eyes, though often downcast, held a steady, honest light when they met hers. He didn't whisper, he didn't stare, he simply saw her. And in this harsh, unforgiving land, that was a gift more precious than gold. She didn't know much about Samuel Pike, but she knew he was different. He saw her as a person, not as a memory of her past. Even with Samuel's quiet kindness, the town's disapproval pressed down on Lily like a heavy blanket. The small, thoughtful gestures from the blacksmith were like tiny sparks in the growing darkness. But the fire of judgment from the other townsfolk seemed to burn brighter with each passing day. Lily found fewer and fewer customers coming to her shop. The mending pile, once a hopeful sign of work, began to shrink. Women who needed buttons sewn or hems repaired would hurry past her door, their eyes fixed straight ahead. The tension was thickest at community gatherings. At the monthly potluck in the town square, Lily would bring a fresh-baked pie, hoping to join in the fellowship. But as she approached the long tables laden with food, conversations would halt. Eyes would follow her, cold and assessing. When she tried to sit at an empty spot, a woman might quickly place her shawl or basket there, claiming it was already taken. Children, usually curious and open, would clutch their mothers' skirts, their innocent faces mirroring the grown-ups' unease. Lily would end up eating her pie alone, perched on a distant bench, the laughter and chatter of the town sounding far away, like a party she wasn't invited to. One afternoon, she overheard two women talking loudly as they passed her open window. "A saloon girl," one sneered, "trying to pretend she's a lady. It's a disgrace." The other woman giggled, and Lily's cheeks burned. The words stung more than any silent stare. It felt like a punch to the gut, a clear sign that her past wasn't just suspected, but openly condemned. Her hopes of a fresh start felt like they were crumbling into the prairie dust. She considered leaving Harmony Creek, packing her sewing machine and her few belongings and trying another town. But where would she go? And would it truly be any different? The thought left her feeling utterly weary and alone. The kindness from Samuel, while a comfort, couldn't erase the deep pain of being so completely unwelcome. Despite the growing ache of loneliness and the hurtful whispers, Lily decided to try church again. She needed strength, a glimmer of hope that she wasn't completely forsaken. Perhaps, she thought, if she kept showing up, if she kept trying, they would eventually see her for who she was now. So on another Sunday morning, she smoothed her simple dress, braided her hair neatly, and walked the familiar path to the small wooden building. As she entered, the low hum of voices died down. All eyes once again turned toward her. Lily walked to the very back pew, her heart thumping, and sat down, trying to make herself as small as possible. The service began, and for a few moments, the words of the hymns and the preacher's sermon offered a fragile peace. But then it happened. During a quiet moment, as the preacher spoke of redemption, a harsh, clear whisper cut through the air. "Some folk just can't be redeemed," Mrs. Albright, a stout woman known for her sharp tongue, declared from a few pews ahead. Her voice was not loud, but it carried, meant to be heard. Other whispers followed, like a ripple through water. "Once a saloon girl, always a saloon girl," someone else muttered, just loud enough. Heads turned. Eyes full of judgment and thinly veiled disgust fixed on Lily. Lily felt every single stare, every hushed comment like a physical blow. Her face flushed a deep, painful red. Her hands trembled in her lap. The air in the church felt heavy, pressing down on her, suffocating her. She squeezed her eyes shut, wishing the floor would open up and swallow her whole. The preacher faltered in his sermon, his gaze briefly meeting Lily's, a look of helplessness in his eyes. It was clear to everyone that the words were meant for her, a public shaming that stripped away any last shred of dignity she had desperately tried to hold onto. Shame washed over her in a burning wave, hotter and more terrible than any anger. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All she knew was that she had to escape. Slowly, carefully, Lily began to rise from the pew, her legs shaky, her head bowed low, ready to flee the unbearable humiliation. As Lily began to stand, her head bowed, ready to flee the overwhelming shame, a new movement caught the corner of her eye. From a few rows ahead, a tall figure rose. It was Samuel Pike. He had been sitting quietly, as always, but now his presence filled the small church. The rhythmic clang of his hammer was usually the loudest sound from him, but his rising now created a different kind of silence. The whispers died completely. Every eye which had been fixed on Lily now swung to him. Samuel walked with purpose, his heavy boots making soft thuds on the wooden floor. He moved past the shocked faces, past Mrs. Albright's gaping mouth directly toward Lily. She watched him approach, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and a strange, budding hope. What was he doing? He reached her pew. Without a word, he gently took her hand. His touch was firm and warm, a stark contrast to the coldness she had felt from everyone else. Lily's eyes, wide with surprise and a touch of tears, finally met his. In his steady gaze, she saw no judgment, only quiet strength and a deep understanding. He didn't say anything, didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than any sermon. Still holding her hand, Samuel turned and with Lily beside him began to walk towards the church door. Every single person in the pews watched them go. The silence was absolute, broken only by the soft shuffle of their feet. Lily, still feeling the burn of shame, also felt a new, unfamiliar courage bloom inside her. With Samuel's hand in hers, she walked past all the staring faces, past the preacher, out into the bright sunshine of the Dakota prairie. His simple act was a clear message to the entire town. He saw her, he respected her, and he stood with her. For the first time in Harmony Creek, Lily didn't feel completely alone. Outside the church, the prairie breeze felt cool on Lily's flushed cheeks. Samuel still held her hand, his grip steady and comforting. They walked in silence for a while, away from the church, away from the town's judging eyes. When they finally stopped, near the edge of a field where wild sunflowers bloomed, Samuel turned to her. His eyes, usually so reserved, held a gentle warmth. "Are you all right, Lily?" he asked, his voice low and kind. It was the first time he had spoken more than a few words to her, and the sound of her name on his lips felt like a balm. Lily nodded, a tear finally escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. "Thank you, Samuel," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I would have done." From that day on, their quiet bond deepened. Samuel started visiting her shop in the evenings, after his own work was done. He wouldn't talk much, often just sitting on the mended chair, watching her sew. Sometimes he'd bring her a small piece of fruit or a wild flower he'd found on the prairie. Lily, in turn, would share stories of her day or hum old tunes as she worked. She felt a peace with him she hadn't known in years. He never asked about her past, never hinted at judgment. He simply accepted her, and that acceptance was a powerful thing. They began taking walks together in the late afternoons, when the sun cast long shadows across the plains. They didn't need many words. A shared glance, a comfortable silence, the gentle brush of their hands as they walked side by side, these were their conversations. Lily found herself looking forward to these moments, to the steady presence of Samuel. He saw the real her, not the saloon girl of old whispers, but Lily, the seamstress, the woman trying to build a new life. And with him, she felt strong enough to keep trying. The world outside their quiet bubble might still be harsh, but inside, a tender understanding bloomed, stronger than any gossip. As weeks turned into months, the quiet understanding between Lily and Samuel blossomed into something deeper, something true. Their love was not born of grand words or public displays, but forged in the gentle strength of shared silences and unwavering support. The town's whispers still existed, a low hum beneath the surface of their lives, but they no longer held the power to wound. For every sidelong glance from a townswoman, there was Samuel's steady presence. For every pulled-away child, there was his hand, warm and strong, in hers. Lily found herself smiling more often, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. She started humming tunes as she worked, no longer feeling the need to hide her joy. Samuel, too, seemed to soften around her. He still wasn't a man of many words, but his eyes held a warmth that spoke volumes. He'd bring her small gifts, a perfectly smooth river stone, a drawing he'd sketched of the prairie at sunset, a piece of wood carved into the shape of a tiny bird. Each token was a testament to his quiet affection, a promise of his unchanging regard. They found comfort in their shared world, a safe haven from the outside prejudice. One evening, as they sat on her porch watching the stars begin to pepper the vast Dakota sky, Lily finally spoke of her past. She told him about the saloon, the desperation, the hard choices. Samuel listened, his hand gently covering hers, not a flicker of judgment in his eyes. When she finished, a heavy weight lifted from her shoulders. "It doesn't matter, Lily," he said, his voice soft but firm. "It's who you are now that matters, and who you are is good." His words were a balm healing old wounds. In his arms, under the wide, endless sky, Lily knew she had found a love stronger than any gossip, more enduring than any prejudice. It was a love built on respect, kindness, and the quiet courage to stand together against a world that tried to tear them apart. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the vast Dakota sky in fiery oranges and soft purples, Samuel and Lily walked hand in hand to their favorite spot on the prairie. The air was cool and still, filled with the scent of sagebrush and the distant call of a coyote. They sat on a rise, watching the last streaks of daylight fade, feeling the familiar comfort of their shared silence. Samuel turned to Lily, his gaze gentle and deep. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, dark object. It was a ring, simple and strong, clearly made from iron. It wasn't shiny like gold, but it had a quiet beauty, a strength that spoke of enduring things. Lily's breath caught in her throat. "Lily," he began, his voice a little rougher than usual, "I don't have much in this world. But I have my two hands and I have my heart, and both of them belong to you." He held out the ring. "I hammered this myself from the strongest iron I could find. It's not fancy, but it's true. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife here under this wide sky?" Tears welled in Lily's eyes, but these were tears of pure joy. Her heart swelled with a love so deep, so true, it felt like the prairie itself was singing. She didn't need a fancy ring or grand words. She needed Samuel, his quiet strength, his unwavering kindness. "Yes, Samuel," she whispered, her voice trembling with happiness. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." With a tender smile, Samuel took her hand, his calloused fingers carefully sliding the iron band onto her finger. It fit perfectly, a symbol of their love, forged in the fires of kindness and understanding, stronger than any gossip or prejudice the town could muster. Under the endless, star-strewn prairie sky, Lily Harper, the seamstress with a past, found her future, her home, and her forever with Samuel Pike, the quiet blacksmith who saw her true heart.